tire problems. You are checking your brakes and suspension system for a pre-trip inspection. Which of these statements are true? A. Brake shoes should not have oil, grease, or brake fluid on them. B. Brake pads should not have brake fluid on them. C. One missing leaf and a leaf spring can be dangerous. Or D. All the above are true. Here's a truck overview. First part is the truck frame. The frame is composed of two rails that run the length of the truck. The two rails are connected together by cross members. The cross members provide strength and support for the frame. The frame provides mounting points for the body components and the suspension components. Here's the frame and suspension. The suspension system. The suspension system supports, distributes, and carries the weight of the truck. It's made up of shock absorbers, leaf springs, or airbags, and axles. It absorbs road shock as the vehicle travels down the road. Axles. Your axles provide attachment points for the wheels. They support the weight of the vehicle and its cargo. Different axles perform different functions. You have two general types of axles: dead axles and live axles. Dead axles. Dead axles are not powered. They support the weight of the vehicle, and they provide attachment points for steering and brake components. Generally, your dead axles will be on your front tractor axle and your trailer axles. Some dead axles have a drop center design that allows for space. Twin screw. Both axles are live. They are powered axles. They support the weight of the vehicle. They provide attachment points for brake components, and generally they're found at the rear of the tractor. Common configuration called twin screw. Both rear tractor axles are powered. Then you have a pusher type tandem rear axle. The front axle is dead and the rear axle is powered. The front axle must have a drop center so that the drive shaft can pass to the live axle. Then you have a tag type tandem rear axle. The front axle is powered and the rear is dead. It gets its name because the rear axle or the dead axle tags along behind the live axle. The engine. There are two types of internal combustion engines. You have gasoline and diesel. Diesel engines. Fuel is supplied by the injectors. Compression in the cylinders ignites the air-to-fuel mixture. Air intake system. This provides fresh air to the engine. An air filter removes dirt, dust, and water from the air, cleans the airflow into the intake manifold, and the manifold provides an equal amount of air to each cylinder. Your typical lubricating system consists of an oil pump, oil fill tube, rocker and drain, cam pocket drain, oil drain from blower or turbocharger, your full flow oil filter, bypass oil filter, oil cooler, drain to oil pan, oil pickup screen. Here's your cooling system setup. Coolant reservoir, clutch. The clutch connects or disconnects the engine to the powertrain. It's made up of three parts. You have a flywheel, clutch disc, and pressure plate. Drivetrain. Drivetrain consists of the engine, the clutch, transmission, gearshift lever, propeller or drive shaft, universal joints, interaxle differential, axle, and axle propeller shaft. Drum brakes. The drums rotate with the wheels. When the brake is applied, the brake lining creates friction with the inside of the drum. This friction slows the vehicle. Here's a brake chamber. Here are your air brake systems. Air pressure is used to increase the braking force. Normal air pressure ranges from 90 to 120 psi. Safety valves activate to keep the pressure from getting too high. And your tire components. Radial tire. The body ply cords run perpendicular across the tread. Your belt plies run circumferentially around the tire under the tread. Biply tire. Body ply cords run diagonally across the tread. And belted biply tires. Body ply cords run diagonally across the tread. Belt plies run circumferentially around the tire under the tread. Rib tread tires. Your tread pattern runs parallel to the sidewall. They're good all-position tires and helps driver to maintain control over the vehicle. Lug tread tires. Your tread pattern runs perpendicular to the sidewall. It's designed for drive wheel positions. High rolling resistance provides greater traction. Tire inflation. Tire pressure should be checked once a week at a minimum. Tire pressure should be checked when the tires are cool, and proper inflation pressure is stamped into the sidewall of the tire. Here's your steering system. This allows the driver to control the direction of the rig. The coupling system. There are two main parts, the trailer kingpin and the tractor fifth wheel. This provides an articulation point for the tractor or trailer. Proper alignment. The best way to align yourself is looking in the driver mirror. You want to align the outside sidewall of the tire with the outside sidewall of the trailer, give or take a couple inches. If you line those up, your kingpin should be in line with the throat of your fifth wheel. Landing gear and crank handle. This will be your vehicle systems orientation.
Hello and welcome to the CDL School Air Brake Orientation. You can find this information in Section 5 of your CDL manual. We'll start by talking about different parts of the air brake system, starting with 5.1.1, the air compressor. The air compressor pumps air into the air storage tanks. The air compressor is connected to the engine through gears or a V-belt. Gears or a V-belt. The compressor may be air-cooled or it may be cooled by the engine cooling system. It may have its own oil supply or be lubricated by engine oil. If the compressor has its own oil supply, Hello and welcome to the CDL School Air Brake Orientation. You can find this information in Section 5 of your CDL manual. We'll start by talking about different parts of the air brake system, starting with 5.1.1, the air compressor. The air compressor pumps air into the air storage tanks. The air compressor is connected to the engine through gears or a V-belt. Gears or a V-belt. The compressor may be air-cooled or it may be cooled by the engine cooling system. It may have its own oil supply or be lubricated by engine oil. If the compressor has its own oil supply, check the level before driving. Air compressor governor. The governor controls when the air compressor will pump air into the air storage tanks. When the air tank pressure rises to the cut out or turn off level around 125 psi, the governor stops the compressor from pumping air. When the tank pressure falls to the cut in or turn on pressure around 100 psi, the governor allows the compressor to start pumping air again. So your prime operating air pressure is between 100 and 125 psi. Air storage tanks. Turn on pressure around 100 psi. Air compressor governor. Be air cooled, or it may be cooled by the engine cooling system. It may have its own oil supply or be lubricated by engine oil. If the compressor has its own oil supply, check the level before driving. Air compressor governor. The governor controls when the air compressor will pump air into the air storage tanks. When the air tank pressure rises to the cut out or turn off level around 125 psi, the governor stops the compressor from pumping air. When the tank pressure falls to the cut in or turn on pressure around 100 psi, the governor allows the compressor to start pumping air again. So your prime operating air pressure is between 100 and 125 psi. Air storage tanks. Air storage tanks are used to hold compressed air. The number and size of tanks varies amongst vehicles. The tanks will hold enough air to allow the brakes to be used several times even if the compressor were to stop working. Air tank drains. Compressed air usually has some water and some compressor oil in it, which is bad for the air brake system. For example, the water could freeze in cold weather and cause brake failure. The water and oil tend to collect in the bottom of the air tank. Be sure that you drain the tanks completely each day. Each air tank is equipped with the drain valve in the bottom. There are two types. You have manually operated and automatic drain valves. The manually operated, you have to turn a quarter turn on the petcock or by pulling a cable. You must drain the tanks yourself at the end of each driving day. In the automatic air tank drains, the water and oil are automatically expelled. These tanks may be equipped for manual draining as well in case the automatic feature were to malfunction. Alcohol evaporator. Some air brake tank drains, the water and oil are automatically expelled. These tanks may be equipped for manual draining as well in case the automatic feature were to malfunction. Alcohol evaporator. Some air brake systems have an alcohol evaporator to put alcohol into the air system. This helps to reduce the risk of ice in air brake valves and other parts during cold weather. Ice inside the system can make the brake stop working. Check the alcohol container and fill up as necessary every day during cold weather. Daily air tank drainage is still needed to get rid of water and oil. Now, the alcohol evaporator is only on some vehicles. Not all brake systems have this. Safety valve. A safety relief valve is installed in the first tank that the air compressor pumps air into. The safety valve protects the tank and the rest of the system from too much pressure. The valve is usually set to open at 150 psi. If the safety valve releases air, something is wrong. Have the fault fixed by a mechanic. Your prime operating air pressure is 100 to 125 psi. Your governor tells your compressor to start pumping at 100 psi, and it tells it to stop pumping at 125 psi. If it continues to pump past 125 psi, the safety relief valve will open at 150 psi. The brake pedal. You put on the brakes by pushing down the brake pedal. Sounds simple enough. The confusing part is there are multiple names for the brake pedal in the brake system, right? So you have the brake pedal, the foot valve, the treadle valve, and anytime we mention service brakes, we're talking about the brakes that are applied when you step on the brake pedal. So brake pedal, foot valve, treadle valve, service brakes, all the same thing. Pushing down the brake pedal harder applies more air pressure. Letting up on the brake pedal reduces the air pressure and releases the brakes. Releasing the brakes lets some compressed air go out of the system, so the air pressure in the tanks is reduced. It must be made up by the air compressor. Pressing and releasing the pedal unnecessarily can let brake pedal, the foot valve, the treadle valve, and anytime we mention service brakes, we're talking about the brakes that are applied when you step on the brake pedal. So brake pedal, foot valve, treadle valve, service brake. So you have the brake pedal, the foot valve, the treadle valve, and anytime we mention service brakes, we're talking about the brakes that are applied when you step on the brake pedal. So brake pedal, foot valve, treadle valve, service brakes, all the same thing. Pushing down the brake pedal harder applies more air pressure. Letting up on the brake pedal reduces the air pressure and releases the brakes. Releasing the brakes lets some compressed air go out of the system, so the air pressure in the tanks is. Anytime we mention service brakes, we're talking about the brakes that are applied when you step on the brake pedal. So brake pedal, foot valve, treadle valve, service brakes, all the same thing. Pushing down the brake pedal harder applies more air pressure. The foot valve, the treadle valve, and anytime we mention service brakes, we're talking about the brakes that are applied when you step on the brake pedal. So brake pedal, foot valve, treadle valve, service brakes, all the same thing. Pushing down the brake pedal harder applies more air pressure. Letting up on the brake pedal reduces the air pressure and releases the brakes. Releasing the brakes lets some compressed air go out of the system, so the air pressure in the tanks is reduced. It must be made up by the air compressor. Pressing and releasing the pedal unnecessarily can let air out faster than the compressor can replace it. If the pressure gets too low, the brakes won't work. Foundation brakes. Foundation brakes are used at each wheel. The most common type is the S-cam drum brake. Drum brakes are located on each end of the vehicle's axles. The wheels are bolted to the drums, and the braking mechanism is inside of. Foundation brakes, made up by the air compressor. Pressing and releasing the pedal unnecessarily can let air out faster than the compressor can replace it. If the pressure gets too low, the brakes won't work. Foundation brakes. Foundation brakes are used at each wheel. The most common type is the S-cam drum brake. Drum brakes are located on each end of the vehicle's axles. The wheels are bolted to the drums, and the braking mechanism is inside of the drum. S-cam brakes. When you push the brake pedal, air is let into each brake chamber. Here's your brake chamber back here in the back on the picture. Air pressure pushes the push rod out. Here's your push rod. Moving the slack adjuster. Here's your slack adjuster. Thus twisting the brake camshaft. Here's your camshaft. This turns the S-cam. Here's your S-cam. It looks like an S, or it's called an S-cam because it looks like an S, right? The S-cam forces the brake shoes away from one another and presses them against the inside of the brake drum. When you release the brake pedal, the S-cam rotates back and a spring pulls the brake shoes away from the drum, letting the wheels roll freely again. Supply pressure gauges. All vehicles with air brakes have a pressure gauge connected to the air tank. If the vehicle has a dual air brake system, there will be a gauge for each half of the system, or it could be a single gauge with two needles inside of the gauge. Each needle will represent one half of the system. Dual systems will be discussed later. These gauges tell you how much pressure is in the air tanks. Application pressure gauges. This gauge shows you how much air pressure you're applying to the brakes. This gauge is not on all vehicles. Increasing application pressure to hold the same speed means your brakes are fading. You should slow down and use lower gear. The need for increased pressure can also be caused by brakes being out of adjustment, air leaks, or mechanical problems. So keep in mind your application pressure gauge shows you how much air you're applying to your brakes. Application, applying. And on the previous slide we talked about the supply pressure gauge. It tells you how much air supply you have available. All right. Supply pressure gauge, application pressure gauge. Low air pressure warning. A low air pressure warning signal is required on vehicles with air brakes. A warning signal you can see must come on before the air pressure in the tanks falls below 60 psi, or 1/2 the governor cutout pressure on older vehicles. The warning is usually a red light. A buzzer may come on as well. Another type of warning is the wig-wag. This device drops a mechanical arm into your view when the pressure in the system drops below 60 psi. An automatic wig-wag will rise out of your view when the pressure in the system goes above 60 psi. The manual reset type must be placed in the out of view position manually. It will not stay in place until the pressure in the system is above 60 psi. Now, this is a low air pressure warning signal on older vehicles. This is a system that's not used anymore, but you still need to know what it is for your permit test. Also keep in mind, on large buses, it is common for the low air pressure warning device to signal at 80 to 85 psi. Now, you may not be here to learn about buses, but sometimes they like to slip the bus questions in on your air brake section. It's sometimes a good idea to just go read through the bus section of your CDL manual just to pick up some of that general knowledge. Stoplight switch. Drivers behind you, good idea to just go read through the bus about buses, but sometimes they like to slip the bus questions not used anymore, but you still need to know what it is for your permit test. Also keep in mind, on large buses, it is common for the low air pressure warning device to signal at 80 to 85 psi. Now, you may not be here to learn about buses, but sometimes they like to slip the bus questions in on your air brake section. It's sometimes a good idea to just go read through the bus section of your CDL manual just to pick up some of that general knowledge. Stoplight switch. Drivers behind you must be warned when you put on your brakes. The air brake system does this with an electric switch that works by air pressure. The switch turns on the brake lights when you put on the air brakes. It's just an electric switch that works by air pressure. Front brake limiting valve. Some older vehicles have a front brake limiting valve and a control in the cab. The control is usually marked normal and slippery. When you put the control in the slippery position, the limiting valve cuts the normal air pressure to the front brakes by half. Limiting valves were used to reduce the chance of front wheel skidding on slippery surfaces. However, they actually reduce the stopping power of the vehicle. Front wheel braking is good under all conditions. Tests have shown front wheel skids from braking are not likely even on ice. Make sure the control is in the normal position to have normal stopping power. Many newer vehicles have automatic front wheel limiting valves. They reduce the air to the front brakes except when the brakes are put on very hard. These valves cannot be controlled by the driver. Spring brakes. All trucks, truck tractors, and buses must be equipped with emergency brakes and parking brakes. They must be held on by a mechanical force. Why? Because air pressure can eventually leak away. Spring brakes are usually used to meet these needs. When driving, powerful springs are held back by air pressure. If the air pressure is removed, the springs put on the brakes. A parking brake control in the cab allows the driver to let the air out of the spring brakes. This lets the springs put the brakes on. A leak in the air brake system, which causes all air to be lost, will also cause the springs to put the brakes on. Tractor and straight truck spring brakes will come on fully when the air pressure drops into the range of 20 to 45 psi. Do not wait for the brakes to come on automatically. When the low air pressure warning light and buzzer first come on, bring the vehicle to a safe stop right away, while you can still control your brakes. The power of the spring brakes depends on the brakes being in adjustment. If the brakes are not properly adjusted, neither the regular brakes nor the emergency or parking brakes will work right. Parking brake controls. In newer vehicles with air brakes, you put on the brakes using a diamond-shaped yellow push-pull control knob. You pull the knob out to put the parking brakes on, and you push it in to release them. On older vehicles, the parking brakes may be controlled by a lever. Use the parking brakes whenever you park. Caution: never push the brake pedal down when the spring brakes are on. If you do, the brakes could be damaged by the combined forces of the springs and the air pressure. Many brake systems are designed so this will not happen, but not all systems are set up that way, and those that are may not always work. It is much better to develop the habit of not pushing the brake pedal down when the spring brakes are on. Sample question. The cutout level of most governors is set at A. 125 psi, B. 120 psi, or C. 100 psi. The correct answer is 125 psi. The air tanks do what? A. Pump air into the system. B. Apply the spring brakes. Or C. hold the compressed air. The correct answer is hold the compressed air. Air tanks should be drained at least blank daily during cold weather. A, once, B, twice, or C, 3. The correct answer is once. There are 3 different air brake systems on a combination vehicle. They are A, the service, spring, and parking brakes, B, the emergency, service, and foundation brakes, or C, the emergency, service, and parking brakes. The correct answer is C, the emergency, service, and parking brakes. The service brake is applied when you do what? A, pull out the trailer protection valves, B, step on the foot valve, or C, push in the tractor protection valve. The correct answer is step on the foot valve. The air compressor is connected to the engine through A, hoses and a V-belt, B, gears and hoses, or C, V-belt or gears. The correct answer is V-belt or gears. 5.2. Dual air brakes. Most heavy-duty vehicles use a dual air brake system for safety. A dual air brake system has 2 separate air brake systems which use a single set of brake controls. Each system has its own air tanks, hoses, lines, etc. One system typically operates the regular brakes on the rear axle or axles. The other system operates the regular brakes on the front axle and possibly one rear axle. Both systems supply air to the trailer, if there is one. The first system is called the primary system, the other is called the secondary system. Now don't get this confused with primary and secondary, meaning your secondary is a backup. Primary is one half the system, the secondary is the second half of the system. They both must be operating fully to have normal operating brakes. Before driving a vehicle with a dual air brake system, allow time for the air compressor to build up to a minimum of 100 psi in both the primary and secondary systems. Watch the primary and secondary air pressure gauges or needles if the system has 2 needles in one gauge. Pay attention to the low air pressure warning light and buzzer. The warning light and buzzer should shut off when the air pressure in both systems rises to a value set by the manufacturer. This value must be greater than 60 psi. For permit purposes, just remember 60 psi. The warning light and buzzer should come on before the air pressure drops below 60 psi in either system. If this happens while driving, you should stop right away and safely park the vehicle. If one air system is very low on air pressure, either the front or the rear brakes will not be operating fully. This means it will take you longer to stop. Bring the vehicle to a safe stop and have the air brake system fixed. Final air brake check. Now this is step 7 of your brake check. We're jumping to step 7 because we're focused on permit questions. Alright, step 7 will be you're testing your air leakage rate. Now we've done some other steps prior to this. We have chalk blocks down so the vehicle will not move, all that kind of stuff. With a fully charged air system, typically 125 psi, turn off the engine, release the parking brake, and time the air pressure drop. The loss rate should be less than 2 psi in 1 minute for single vehicles and less than 3 psi in 1 minute for combination vehicles. Then apply 90 psi or so with the brake pedal. After the initial pressure drop, if the air pressure falls more than 3 psi in 1 minute for single vehicles or 4 psi in 1 minute for combination vehicles, the air loss rate is too much. Check for air leaks and fix before driving the vehicle. Otherwise, you could lose your brakes while driving. So we have 2 different types of vehicles we're talking about here. We're talking about single vehicles and combination vehicles. For a single vehicle, Before stepping on the brake pedal, you should lose no more than 2 psi in 1 minute. Once you step on the brake pedal, you should lose no more than 3 psi in 1 minute. For combination vehicles, it's a larger vehicle, so our numbers are a little bit bigger. With the brakes released, you should lose no more than 3 psi in 1 minute for a combination vehicle. And when you step on the brake pedal, you should lose no more than 4 psi in 1 minute. Here's a visual for the previous slide. So we're testing our air leakage rate. We either have a single vehicle or we have a combination vehicle. If we have a single vehicle with all our brakes released, we should have no more than 2 psi lost. All these times would be 1 minute. Alright, if your single vehicle has your brakes applied, then you should lose no more than 3 psi in 1 minute. If we're talking combination vehicle and your brakes are released, you should lose no more than 3 psi in 1 minute. If you have a combination vehicle with the brakes applied, you should lose no more than 4 psi in 1 minute. Now you need to know all this information. However, when you're reading your questions on your permit test, the first thing to identify is it a single vehicle or a combination vehicle. And then the next thing to identify would be, are the brakes released or applied? Here's a sample question. In a bus or a straight truck with the brakes released and the engine off, you should lose no more than how many psi and how much time? A, 2 psi in 45 seconds. B, 3 psi in 1 minute. Or C, 2 psi in 1 minute. The correct answer is 2 psi in 1 minute. It identified it was a bus or a straight truck. That would be a single vehicle. And then it tells you the brakes are released. So it would be 2 psi and always in 1 minute. Or a combination vehicle, then you should lose no more than 3 psi in 1 minute. If we're talking combination vehicle and your brakes are released, you should lose no more than 3 psi in 1 minute. If you have a combination vehicle with the brakes applied, you should lose no more than 4 psi in 1 minute. Now you need to know all this information. However, when you're reading your questions on your permit test, the first thing to identify is it a single vehicle or a combination vehicle. And then the next thing to identify would be, are the brakes released or applied? Here's a sample question. In a bus or a straight truck with the brakes released and the engine off, you should lose no more than how many psi and how much time? A, 2 psi in 45 seconds. B, 3 psi in 1 minute. Or C, 2 psi in 1 minute. The correct answer is 2 psi in 1 minute. It identified it was a bus or a straight truck. That would be a single vehicle. And then it tells you the brakes are released. So it would be 2 psi and always in 1 minute. Normal stops. Push the brake pedal down. Control the pressure so the vehicle comes to a smooth, safe stop. If you have a manual transmission, don't push the clutch in until the engine RPM is down close to idle. When stopped, select your starting gear. Stopping distance. Stopping distance was described in Section 2 under Speed and Stopping. When stopped, select your starting gear. If you have a manual transmission, don't push the clutch in until the engine RPM is down close to idle. When stopped, select your starting gear. Stopping distance. Stopping distance was described in Section 2 under Speed and Stopping distance. With air brakes, there's an added delay, the time required for the brakes to work after the brake pedal is pushed. With hydraulic brakes used on your cars, your light, medium trucks, things like that, and you're in the parking lot, in your driveway, all that stuff, the brakes work instantly. However, with air brakes, it takes a little time, 1/2 second or more, for the air to flow through the lines to the brakes. Thus, the total stopping distance for vehicles with air brakes is made up of 4 different factors. You have your perception distance, how long it takes you to perceive that you need to stop. Your reaction distance, how long it takes you to react by moving your foot from the gas pedal to the brake pedal. Your brake lag distance, which is what we're talking about now. and your effective braking distance, which would be how much distance does it actually take to stop your vehicle. Add all four of those factors together and you get your total stopping distance. The air brake lag distance at 55 miles per hour on dry pavement adds about 32 feet. So at 55 miles per hour, for an average driver under good traction and brake conditions, the total stopping distance is over 450 feet. Over 450 feet. Parking brakes. Anytime you park, use the parking brakes, except as noted on the next slide. Pull the parking brake control knob out to apply the parking brakes. Push it in to release them. The control will be a yellow, diamond-shaped knob labeled parking brakes on newer vehicles. On older vehicles, it may be a round blue knob or some other shape, including a lever that swings from side to side or up and down. Don't use the parking brakes if the brakes are very hot, after you just came down a steep grade, or if the brakes are very wet in freezing temperatures. If they are used while they're very hot, they can be damaged by the heat. If they are used in freezing temperatures when the brakes are very wet, they can freeze so that the vehicle cannot move. Use wheel chocks to hold the vehicle. Let hot brakes cool before using the parking brakes. If the brakes are wet, use the brakes lightly while driving in a low gear to heat and dry them. If your vehicle does not have automatic air tank drains, drain your air tanks at the end of each working day to remove the moisture and oil. Otherwise, the brakes could fail. Also, never leave your vehicle unattended without applying the parking brakes or chalking the wheels. Your vehicle might roll away and cause injury and damage. Sample question. You should blank push the brake pedal down when the spring brakes are on. A. Never. B. Always. Or C. Sometimes. The correct answer is never. Repeatedly pressing and releasing or fanning the brake pedal may result in what? A. A loss of air pressure. B. A buildup of air pressure. Or C. No change in brake air pressure. The correct answer is a loss of air pressure. You should know your brakes are fading when what happens? A. You have to push harder on the brake pedal to control your downhill speed. B. The brake pedal feels spongy when you apply pressure. Or C. Pressure on the brake pedal is released and speed increases. The correct answer is you have to push harder on the brake pedal to control your downhill speed. If you need more pressure on the brake pedal, then that means your brakes are fading.
This completes the air brake orientation. Log into the Learning Management System at www.cdlschool.com and begin taking practice exams. If you have any questions, please ask your instructor.
Hello, and welcome to the CDL School Combination Vehicle Orientation. This information can be found in Section 6 of your CDL manual. Anything that's highlighted in red could be in relation to a possible test question.
Driving combination vehicles safely. Combination vehicles are usually heavier, longer, and require more driving skill than single commercial vehicles. This means that drivers of combination vehicles need more knowledge and skill than drivers of single vehicles. In this section, we talk about important safety factors that apply specifically to combination vehicles. Rollover risks. More than half of truck driver deaths and crashes are the result of truck rollovers. When more cargo is piled up in a truck, the center of gravity moves higher up from the road. The truck becomes easier to turn over. Fully loaded rigs are 10 times more likely to roll over in a crash than empty rigs. The following two things will help you prevent a rollover. Keep the cargo as close to the ground as possible and drive slowly around turns. Keeping cargo low is even more important in combination vehicles than in straight trucks. Also keep the load centered on your rig.
If the load is to one side so that it makes the trailer lean, a rollover is more likely. Make sure your cargo is centered and spread out as much as possible. Rollovers happen when you turn too fast. Drive slowly around corners, on ramps and off ramps. Avoid quick lane changes, especially when fully loaded. Steer gently. Trucks with trailers have a dangerous crack the whip effect. When you make a quick lane change, the crack the whip effect can turn the trailer over. There are many accidents where only the trailer is overturned. Steer gently and smoothly when you're pulling trailers. If you make a sudden movement with your steering wheel, your trailer could tip over. Follow far enough behind other vehicles, at least 1 second for each 10 feet of your vehicle length, plus an additional second if going over 40 miles per hour. Look far enough down the road to avoid being surprised and having to make a sudden lane change. At night, drive slowly enough to see obstacles with your headlights before it is too late to change lanes or stop gently. Slow down to a safe speed before going into a turn. Brake early. Control your speed whether fully loaded or empty. Large combination vehicles take longer to stop when they're empty than when they're fully loaded. When lightly loaded, the very stiff suspension springs and strong brakes give poor traction and make it very easy to lock the wheels up. Your trailer can swing out, strike other vehicles. Your tractor can jackknife very quickly. You must also be very careful about driving bobtail tractors. This is your tractor without a semi-trailer attached. Tests have shown that bobtails can be very hard to stop smoothly. It takes them longer to stop than a tractor semi-trailer loaded to the maximum gross weight. In any combination rig, allow for lots of following distance and look far ahead so you can brake early. Don't be caught by surprise and have to make a panic stop. Prevent trailer skids. Recognize the skid. The earliest and best way to recognize that the trailer has started to skid is by seeing it in your mirrors. Anytime you apply the brakes hard, check the mirrors to make sure your trailer is staying where it should be. Once the trailer swings out of your lane, it's very difficult to prevent a jackknife. Stop using the brake. Release the brakes to get the traction back. Do not use the trailer handbrake if you have one to straighten out the rig. This is the wrong thing to do since the brakes on the trailer wheels cause the skid in the first place. Once the trailer wheels grip the road again, the trailer will start to follow the tractor and straighten out. Turn wide. When a vehicle goes around a corner, the rear wheels follow a different path than the front wheels. This is called off-tracking or cheating. The figure shows how off-tracking causes the path followed by a tractor to be wider than the rig itself. Longer vehicles will off-track more. Backing with a trailer. When backing a car, straight truck, or bus, you turn the top of the steering wheel in the direction you want to go. When backing a trailer, you turn the steering wheel in the opposite direction. Once the trailer starts to turn, you must turn the wheel the other way to follow the trailer. Whenever you back up with you turn the top of the steering wheel in the direction you want to go. Backing with the trailer.
When backing a car, straight truck, or bus, you turn the top of the steering wheel in the direction you want to go. When backing a trailer, you turn the steering wheel in the opposite direction. Once the trailer starts to turn, you must turn the wheel the other way to follow the trailer. Whenever you back up with the trailer, try to position your vehicle so you can back in a straight line. If you must back on a curved path, back to the driver's side so you can see. Trailer hand valve. The trailer hand valve, also called the trolley valve or Johnson bar, works the trailer brakes. The trailer hand valve should only be used to test the trailer brakes. Do not use it in driving because of the danger of making the trailer skid. The foot brake sends air to all the brakes on the vehicle, including the trailer. There is much less danger of causing a skid or jackknife when using just the foot brake. Never use the hand valve for parking because all the air might leak out unlocking the brakes in trailers that don't have spring brakes. Always use the parking brakes when parking. If the trailer does not have spring brakes, use wheel chocks to keep the trailer from moving. Tractor protection valve. The tractor protection valve keeps air in the tractor or truck brake system should the trailer break away or develop a bad leak. The tractor protection valve is controlled by the trailer air supply control valve in the cab. The control valve allows you to open and shut the tractor protection valve. The tractor protection valve will close automatically if air pressure is low in the range of 20 to 45 psi. When the tractor protection valve closes, it stops any air from going out of the tractor. It also lets the air out of the trailer emergency line. This causes the trailer emergency brakes to come on with possible loss of control. Emergency brakes will be covered later. Trailer air supply control. The trailer air supply control on newer vehicles is a red 8-sided knob which you use to control the tractor protection valve. You push it in to supply the trailer with air and pull it out to shut the air off and put the trailer emergency brakes on. The valve will pop out, thus closing the tractor protection valve when the air pressure drops into the range of 20 to 45 psi. Tractor protection valve controls or emergency valves on older vehicles may not operate automatically. There may be a lever rather than a knob. The normal position is used for pulling a trailer. The emergency position is used to shut off the air and put the trailer emergency brakes on. Trailer air lines. The service line, also called the control line or signal line, carries air which is controlled by the foot brake or trailer hand brake. Depending on how hard you press the foot brake or hand valve, the pressure on the service line will similarly change. The service line is connected to relay valves. These valves allow the trailer brakes to be applied more quickly than otherwise would be possible. The emergency line, also called the supply line, has two purposes. First, it supplies air to the trailer air tanks. Second, the emergency line controls the emergency brakes on combination vehicles. Loss of air pressure in the emergency line causes the trailer emergency brakes to come on. The pressure loss could be caused by a trailer breaking loose, thus tearing apart the emergency air hose, or it could be caused by a hose, metal tubing, or other part breaking, letting the air out. When the emergency line loses pressure, it also causes the tractor protection valve to close. The air supply knob will pop out. Emergency lines are often coated with the color red to keep them from getting mixed up with the service line, which is blue. Hose couplers, commonly known as glad hands. Glad hands are coupling devices used to connect the service and emergency air lines from the truck or tractor to the trailer. The couplers have a rubber seal which prevents the air from escaping. Clean the couplers and the rubber seals before a connection is made. When connecting the glad hands, press the two seals together with the couplers at a 90-degree angle to each other. A turn of the glad hand attached to the hose will join and lock the couplers. If you do cross your air lines, supply air will be sent to the service line instead of going to charge the trailer air tanks. Air will not be available to release the trailer spring brakes, your parking brakes. If the spring brakes don't release when you push the trailer air supply control, check the airline connections. Older trailers do not have spring brakes. Prior to 1975, it was not required. After 1975, it was required for all trailers to have spring brakes. Some vehicles have dead end or dummy couplers to which the hoses may be attached when they are not in use.
This will prevent water and dirt from getting into the coupler and the air lines. Use the dummy couplers when the air lines are not connected to a trailer. If there are no dummy couplers, the glad hands can sometimes be locked together depending on the couplings. It is very important to keep the air supply clean. Shutoff valves. Shutoff valves are used in the service and supply air lines at the back of trailers used to tow other trailers, triple trailers. These valves prevent closing off air lines when another trailer is not being towed. You must check that all shutoff valves are in the open position except the ones in the back of the last trailer, which must be closed. Coupling tractor semi-trailers. Inspect the fifth wheel. Check for damaged or missing parts. Check to see that the mounting to the tractor is secure, no cracks in the frame. Be sure that the fifth wheel plate is greased as required. Failure to keep the fifth wheel plate lubricated could cause steering problems because of friction between the tractor and the trailer. Check if the fifth wheel is in proper position for coupling. The fifth wheel is tilted downward toward the rear of the tractor. The jaws are open. Safety unlocking handles in the automatic lock position. If you have a sliding fifth wheel, make sure it is in the locked position. Make sure the trailer kingpin is not bent or broken. Your trailer kingpin has 3 components: the base, the shank, and the head. Check the trailer height. The trailer should be low enough that it is raised slightly by the tractor when the tractor is backed under it. Raise or lower the trailer as needed. If the trailer is too low, the tractor may strike and damage the trailer nose. If the trailer is too high, it may not couple correctly. Check that the kingpin and fifth wheel are aligned. Begin backing. Stop once you hear the jaws lock around the kingpin. Inspect the coupling. Use a flashlight if necessary. Make sure there's no space between the apron of the trailer and the fifth wheel. If there is space, something is wrong. Your kingpin, use a flash wheel are aligned. Begin backing. Stop once you hear the jaws lock around the kingpin. Inspect the coupling. Use a flashlight if necessary. Make sure there's no space between the apron of the trailer and the fifth wheel. If there is space, something is wrong. Your kingpin may be on top of the closed fifth wheel jaws, and the trailer could come loose very easily. Go under the trailer and look into the back of the fifth wheel. Make sure the fifth wheel jaws have closed around the shank of the kingpin. Make sure it is securely mounted to the frame, there's no missing or damaged parts, it has enough grease, and the release arm is properly seated and the safety latch is engaged. Check your air and electrical lines to the trailer. Your electrical cord should be firmly plugged in and secured. Your air line should be properly connected to the glad hands with no air leaks, properly secured with enough slack for turns. All your lines should be free from damage. Sliding fifth wheel. Make sure that the slide is not damaged or missing any parts. Make sure it's properly greased, all locking pins are present and locked in place. If it is air powered, make sure there are no air leaks, and check the clearance between the landing gear and the cab. Sample questions. When coupling, the proper position of the fifth wheel is A. Level with the ground, B. Tilted up towards the rear of the tractor, or C. Tilted down towards the rear of the tractor. The correct answer is tilted down towards the rear of the tractor. Which part of the kingpin should the locking jaw close around? A. The shank, B. The head, or C. The base? The correct answer is the shank. When checking that the trailer is securely coupled to the tractor, the landing gear should be what? A. Fully raised, B. Slightly raised, or C. Fully lowered? The correct answer is slightly raised. There are 2 things a driver can do to prevent a rollover. They are keep the cargo as close to the ground as possible and what? A. Make sure the brakes are properly adjusted. B. Keep both hands on the steering wheel. Or C. Reduce your speed before entering curves and turns. The correct answer is reduce your speed before entering curves and turns. This completes the combination vehicle orientation. Log into the Learning Management System at www.cdlschool.com and begin taking the practice exams. If you have any questions, please ask your instructor.
Why our system works. The CDL School has developed a system for preparing for the state CDL exam. Since 1963, we have found that many of our students have many different levels of knowledge and prior experience as it pertains to commercial motor vehicles. Therefore, what we found is it is more efficient to study only the information that you do not already know. Our training mode is designed to quickly identify those sections of the manual that you need to learn more about. Once you study those sections, you will then take another test that measures what you have just learned. Research has shown that by following this system, you will help increase your memory retention, which leads to higher scores. On October 26, 2011, the Wall Street Journal published an article that states something very similar. The question they asked was, what is the best way to study? And they had several professors and several experts in the field. Basically, what they pointed out was by testing yourself repeatedly before an exam, teaches the brain to retrieve and apply knowledge from memory. The method is more effective than rereading a textbook, and that's exactly why our system works. The CDL manual is a very large textbook and has a lot of information, and you need to isolate what you know and what you don't know. And he says he just took the test over and over and over again until it became almost aggravating. And it feels like hard work, but you will see steady increases to your scores, and that will boost your confidence. The reason why this system works also is because by taking the practice test, it helps with other skills, such as pacing yourself. There are a lot of questions on this exam, and you need to take your time, question by question, until it is completed. And again, you can read other parts of this article here online. They talk about sleep as an important role, eating is an important role, and also calming your nerves and trying to minimize anxious feelings. So this is another affirmation of why our system works here.